Moments when reality tears apart, matrix glitches and dimensional horror. Chapter 1: Awakening and the Collapse of the Illusion. Every morning when you open your eyes, you are certain that the ground beneath your feet is solid. Walls are stacked stone upon stone. Air is a gas that can be breathed, and time is a relentless river flowing endlessly forward. We call this reality, a safe, consistent, and logical universe. But what if I told you that this entire sense of solidity is nothing more than an interface presented to your consciousness by a highly advanced operating system? What if those unshakable laws we call the laws of physics are actually nothing more than lines of software code preventing the universe from collapsing? And most importantly, what if, like every piece of software, this enormous system we live in sometimes glitches? Today, I am going to tell you about a number of events said to have appeared in paranormal investigations, military archives, police records, and various accounts. Events that challenge the human mind and nervous system. I am not going to tell you that all of them are verified facts. Some are cases that have been told for years. Others are stories of disputed origin that have taken shape around real events. But they all share the same thing. Moments when the fabric of reality, at least in the eyes of those who experience them, seem to tear for a fraction of a second. In this video, we will call these moments matrix glitches. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and lean back. But be careful. After this video, you may never look at the table in your room, the ground beneath your feet, or your reflection in the mirror quite as comfortably again. Because once the system glitches, no one can know exactly where the next glitch will occur, or who it will happen to. Chapter 2: Coordinate Shift and Molecular Apocalypse. The calendar showed the autumn of 1987. It was the final years of the Soviet Union. In a densely forested area of the Zhytomyr region, now within the borders of Ukraine, there was reportedly a secret military signal station completely isolated from the outside world. Two young soldiers on duty, Nikolai and Alexei, were walking along the perimeter of the base on a routine security check. The air was foggy, and that bleak gray atmosphere of the Eastern Bloc had settled over the forest. A few meters beyond the perimeter fence, they noticed an old industrial well cover, or perhaps the entrance to an underground shelter, hidden among the bushes. It was an abandoned well approximately 4 meters deep, with a completely dry concrete floor. Following military procedure, they turned on their flashlights, suspecting that a stranger or a fugitive might have fallen into the well. Alexei was the first to descend the ladder. Nikolai remained above, holding his rifle at the mouth of the well. That was the exact second when the human mind seemed to stop, and the universe's coordinate system appeared to fail. The moment Alexei stepped onto the concrete floor at the bottom of the well, Nikolai heard no scream from below. Only a very strange vacuum-like sound, as if the air itself were being sucked away. When he pointed his flashlight downward, what he saw was even more disturbing than the most horrifying sight a soldier could encounter in war. Alexei had not fallen into a hole. There was no crack in the concrete, yet Alexei, like a character in a malfunctioning computer game, was sinking into the solid concrete floor. It was not like sinking into liquid mud. It looked as though two solid materials were passing through each other at the atomic level. Alexei's boots, then his ankles and knees, disappeared inside the concrete floor. The ground, as if it had lost its solidity, had become like a digital void pulling Alexei inward. In panic, Nikolai lowered the rifle strap. "Grab this, Alexei!" he shouted. Alexei grabbed the strap. But the horrifying part was that the moment he grabbed it, Alexei's arms and hands suddenly began to disappear into the empty air as well. It was as if Alexei's body were slowly being erased from this universe, like an object moving outside the camera's field of view. Alexei's final words to Nikolai were reportedly recorded in the military account as follows: "Nikolai, I don't feel any pain, but my legs are in another room. It's very cold there." A few seconds later, Alexei disappeared completely. At the bottom of the well, there was nothing but flat, empty, gray Soviet concrete. According to the account, military engineering teams arrived at the site and began breaking apart the bottom of the well with heavy drills and breakers. After hours of work, they reportedly reached Alexei's lifeless body approximately 1.5 meters beneath the concrete block. But the next part of the story was even more disturbing. According to the account, Alexei had not suffocated beneath the concrete, nor had he been crushed by its weight. The alleged autopsy report claimed that Alexei's bones, muscles, and blood cells had become intertwined at the cellular level with the calcium and silicate components of the concrete. Human flesh and stone appeared to have merged at the quantum level and become a single substance. And then there was something even worse. The mechanical military watch on Alexei's wrist was still running, and the time displayed on it was exactly 48 hours ahead of the moment the incident had supposedly occurred. According to the story, the system had not merely shifted Alexei's coordinates, it had thrown him outside the timeline and trapped him inside the heart of solid stone. So what does this tell us? Those rock formations in mountainous regions that resemble human faces and retain their shape even when viewed from a distance, or even up close. Are they really just the result of wind erosion? Or could they be the actual remains of forgotten people, permanently merged with the molecular structure of mountains as a result of a similar error made by the universe thousands of years ago? Perhaps all of this is simply the human mind's tendency to find meaning in shapes. But what if it isn't? Could the Matrix sometimes leave traces of the objects it erased behind on stone? Chapter 3: Memory and the Tearing of Space. If the idea of solid matter losing its coordinates has not challenged your nervous system enough, let us now turn toward Spain in 2006, to the eerie foothills of the Catalan Pyrenees. The case known as the Lérida case file is one of the most striking stories describing how the system might load not merely a single object, but an enormous spatial area incorrectly. A young couple named Elena and David M. had found a mountain house for rent online, hoping to escape city life. They set out late at night for a weekend getaway. After driving through the winding, pitch-black roads of the Pyrenees, they reached the coordinates of the house at around 2 a.m. The house stood alone among the pine trees, an old country home made of wood and stone. They had picked up the key from a drop-off point in the village. David inserted the iron key into the lock. The door opened with a slight creak. Inside were old pieces of furniture, a fireplace, and porcelain plates sitting in the kitchen. Everything looked perfectly normal, like an ordinary weekend house. Exactly 10 minutes after they entered, the rhythm of the universe suddenly changed. Elena was trying to make coffee in the kitchen when she noticed that the digital display on her wristwatch had frozen. She took out her phone. There was no signal. The phone's clock was also stuck at 2:11. At that exact moment, the sound of the wind outside, the rustling of the pine trees, and the distant hooting of an owl stopped as if cut by a knife. This was not ordinary silence. It was an absolute vacuum in which sound itself seemed to no longer exist. As if someone had completely shut down the universe's audio file. David was in the bathroom at the time. When he stood in front of the mirror, he encountered a paranormal anomaly he would never forget. He turned on the faucet. The water was flowing, but there was no sound. He raised his head and looked into the mirror. His reflection was standing there. But when David turned his head to the right, his reflection turned its head to the right 2 seconds later. The synchronization between reality and reflection had broken down. It was as if the Matrix could no longer load David's movements onto the screen in time. Terrified, he ran out of the bathroom, grabbed Elena, and said, "We're leaving." They opened the door and ran outside. But the forest they had left behind was no longer there. The place where they had parked the car was completely empty. The area was covered by a liquid-like layer of gray fog suspended in the air. The fog did not move. It was like a frozen wall of mist. When they stepped onto the ground, they felt the earth beneath their feet flex like a soft sponge and felt that it was warmer than normal. Worst of all, a very deep, low-frequency whisper rose from behind the wooden walls of the house. It was not a language. It sounded as if an enormous stream of data were murmuring to itself inside the empty space behind the walls. Realizing they could not even reach the car, the couple ran back inside the house and locked the door. Until 9 a.m., they waited in that frozen time, holding each other. At 9 a.m., the fog suddenly vanished like a video transition. The sounds of birds returned like an explosion. The phone screens began working again. When they sought refuge at the police station, the officers thought the couple had lost their minds. But when they followed the tire tracks from David's car to the coordinates in the mountains, the story became even stranger. The mountain house where the couple had spent the night, lit the fireplace, and looked into the bathroom mirror was gone. There were only dense pine trees there, untouched for at least 80 years. The tire tracks from David's car suddenly ended in an empty patch of ground right in the middle of those trees. The couple was said to have spent 7 hours during the night in freezing temperatures below zero on the snow, believing they were inside a house. It was also claimed that no drugs were found in their blood, and in Elena's bag, there was still the iron key to the non-existent house. When the website was investigated, it was allegedly discovered that neither such a listing nor the person who had supposedly rented out the house existed in the database. Was this a haunted house? A perceptual illusion? A confusion of memory and space? Or was it actually a temporary tear in the fabric of space-time? If we interpret the story through the matrix theory, one could imagine that the couple had slipped into a void because a location from a past or parallel database had accidentally been loaded at those coordinates. And when morning came, the system had cleaned itself and removed the object. Of course, that does not mean the story has been scientifically proven. But isn't that exactly what makes it frightening? What if you really experienced a moment that made you believe something like this might be possible? Chapter 4. Rendering Errors and the Collision of Time. What happens if the system loads the same object twice within the same period of time? In gaming terminology, this could be called a duplication glitch. In paranormal accounts, similar incidents are sometimes interpreted as timeline synchronization failures. The incident said to have occurred on Austria's A2 highway in the Alps in 1998 is one of the most striking examples of this phenomenon. Highway police were investigating an accident involving a red logistics truck on a winding mountain road. The truck had struck the barriers, its trailer had tipped over, and it had completely blocked the left lane of the highway. Police immediately closed the road with cones and warning signs. Paramedics bandaged the lightly injured truck driver's head. The driver was sitting inside the ambulance beside the barrier. A line of traffic stretching for miles was beginning to form behind the accident. Exactly 7 minutes after the crash, a transmission came over the radios. From directly across the lane that had been completely closed, coming from the opposite direction, a red truck was rapidly approaching. The police froze as they watched it pass. The logo of the logistics company, the license plate number, and even the old rust and scratch marks on the right side of the trailer were identical to the truck that had just crashed and was lying overturned in the middle of the road. But the detail that truly paralyzed the observers was the driver in the cab. Behind the wheel of the truck speeding past in the opposite lane was the exact same driver who had just been sitting beside the barrier with his head bandaged. The driver looked toward his own crashed truck, and the ambulance by the roadside waved at the police with an empty, expressionless smile and continued on his way. The police immediately grabbed their radios and ordered the checkpoint farther ahead to stop the truck. But the checkpoint reported that no truck with that license plate or that color had passed through. The truck seemed to have vanished into thin air somewhere between 2 points on the highway. If we interpret this story through the matrix theory, the system might have failed to erase the data from the moment of the crash, taken the data from 7 minutes earlier in the timeline, and rendered it again in the opposite lane. The same person, the same object, within the same seconds, existing at 2 different coordinates of the universe. When the driver was questioned, he reportedly remembered nothing, saying that he had only briefly dozed off. So what really happened? A perceptual illusion? An error in the story? Or a brief trace of a collision occurring within time itself? We do not know. But that is exactly where the truly disturbing part of the story begins. Chapter 5: The Failure of Object Continuity and the Missing Pixel. Our final example is one of the strangest stories describing the idea that the universe's physics engine could temporarily freeze for a fraction of a second. In 2011, near Chile's Atacama Desert, geologist Manuel was conducting fieldwork inside the container laboratory of a mining exploration company. Manuel had placed a heavy piece of quartz and silicate-rich rock collected from the desert on the table to examine it under a microscope. At that moment, his hand struck the coffee cup on the table. As he reflexively tried to catch the rock, he dropped it. The rock did not hit the ground. Manuel blinked and looked down. The solid piece of stone, weighing approximately 1.3 kilograms, was suspended exactly 30 centimeters above the ground. It seemed as though time had stopped for that stone in the middle of its acceleration downward. Manuel dropped to his knees in terror. He moved his hand underneath the stone, above it and around it. There was no magnetic field, no invisible wire. The stone was hanging in the air as if it had completely rejected the law of gravity. But what made the incident truly disturbing was the optical anomaly. During the seconds when the stone appeared frozen in the air, the light from the fluorescent lamps in the laboratory did not seem to strike the stone normally. The stone appeared to absorb light, surrounded by an almost perfectly black outline resembling a digital error line, like a missing pixel that had been erased from the universe's graphics engine. The object physically existed, but it was as if the universe could not visually process its existence at those coordinates. The moment Manuel turned his back and took one step toward the door to shout for his colleague in the next room, a sharp bang came from behind him. He turned around. The rock had fallen to the ground and rolled underneath the table. It was as if gravity had switched back on. The system had reset itself. Manuel immediately removed the rock from the laboratory, because that moment when the stone had remained suspended in the air was the moment when he began to wonder how fragile the universe's software might actually be. Of course, the same question applies here as well. Was this really a physical anomaly, an optical illusion, an experimental error? Or was there truly some kind of opening in the laws of nature that we do not yet understand? We do not know. But even a stone remaining suspended in the air for only a few seconds is enough to make us ask a much larger question. How well do we really know the rules of reality? Chapter 6: Conclusion: The chilling question of the simulation. What do all these stories tell us? The soldier said to have been buried inside the heart of concrete in Zhytomyr. The couple whose time supposedly froze inside a house that did not exist in Lerida. The driver said to have watched his own crash on the highway. And the black-shadowed stone that remained suspended in the air. None of these can be definitively declared a matrix glitch based on the information we have. Some may have originated from real events and changed over time. Others may have been shaped by misunderstanding, perception, memory, or the influence of storytelling. Perhaps there are other explanations behind all of them that we simply do not know yet. But now, for a moment, let us set all of those possibilities aside and think about the matrix idea exactly as it is. Let us assume that the enormous operating system we live upon, those enormous blocks of code behind the universe, can experience momentary collapses. Some interpretations of quantum physics suggest that observation and measurement play a fundamental role in the behavior of physical systems. So what happens when we turn our backs? When we are not looking, does the world behind us really continue to exist? Or does the system simply recreate it when we turn our heads? Sometimes, very rarely, we experience moments that make us feel as though the system is lagging. When you turn your head too quickly and the shadow in the corner of the room seems to change shape for a fraction of a second. When you cannot find your keys where you left them, only to see them appear right in front of you 5 minutes later. or that perfectly recognizable human face staring at you from a rock on the top of a mountain, none of these things proves the same phenomenon, but they can all lead us to the same question. How accurately do we really perceive what we call reality? Close your eyes and think once more about the ground beneath your feet. Is it really solid? Or could it simply be that the system wants you to feel that way? And most importantly, if the next system glitch occurs right now in the room where you are sitting, what dimension will you fall into when you pass through those solid walls? Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe all of this is simply our mind's attempt to make sense of the unknown. Maybe the universe is far more consistent than we think. But what if it isn't? To understand that a system has malfunctioned, you first have to know how the system works. And perhaps the truly frightening part is we still do not fully know how the system works.